Hi everybody, it's Maureen of Maureen 97 Designs, and I'm here with part 2 of my Mindful Moodling series, where I showed what I got from the Mindful Moodling collection from Joggles. Well, actually it's from Studio Light, but I got it through the online store Joggles. And I'm showing what I bought these for, what I'm doing with them, which is using them as just kind of structures for my own doodling. And now this one is the heart, and you can see it does have a bunch of its own doodling on it, and it has even dangles and things. But what I'm going to do is, first of all, I'm going to stamp in black ink our archival distress black ink, and then I'm gonna color in some of the areas that are already doodled, and then I can actually doodle in the open areas myself. And the thing is, though, you're not limited to doodling just in the open areas. You can actually doodle where there already are doodles, and I'll show you some of that when I get to that part. But first we need to stamp this, and I'm stamping on watercolor paper because I want to use watercolors for my coloring. So I would definitely recommend a stamping platform for stamping this out, because watercolor paper is textured and you might not get a great first stamp. So you might need to stamp again, and that's where the stamping platform comes in really handy. And I'm using the Misty 2.0 here. So I've already put my watercolor paper in. I've got it butted up to the corner. Let me move that just a little bit. There we go. I've got it butted into the corner, and I've got my magnet down. So I'm just going to take off my stamp. And this is a rather large stamp, so you have to use the original size Misty, or you can use the memory Misty if you have it. This is not going to fit in the mini. So I just put that down. Then I'm going to go ahead and pick it up with my door. And then I can get out my black ink pad here. And like I said, I'm using the Archival Distress Black Soot. You could use any waterproof ink for this. I just have had this on my desk for a while, so I've been using it, and I think it works great. To me, it works just like the regular black archival ink pad, so just because I have the full-size one of the Distress is what I'm using. So you want to press really hard. Make sure that you're getting all the different areas. And it's at this point where you might want to use a tool like this Just Press tool from Tailored Expressions, where it helps you to put even pressure on your stamp tool to help you get a good impression. Let me see. That is actually a really good impression, so I don't have to stamp it again. But if I wanted it just a little bit darker, I could go ahead and ink up the stamp again and stamp again. So I'm going to take this out of my Misty. Sorry for the dog, that's my Yuki. She's a Chihuahua, so she likes to make noise. Okay. So let me get ready. I need to go get my watercolor paints and all of my black pens that I'm going to use to doodle on this. So I'll be right back. Okay, so here I have my favorite doodling pens, which are the Sakura Pigma Micron pens. And I like to use the 01, the 05, and the 08, obviously for thin, medium, and heavy strokes. And I don't have any like formula or anything for which one I use at any given time. I just kind of look at the area that I'm drawing in and thinking about what I'm going to doodle, and then I try to pick the pen based on that. So this is the image all stamped out, and if I forgot to mention it before, this is on watercolor paper. I'm just going to zoom in here a little bit so you can see what I'm doing a little better. And for this, I'm going to actually use my 01 and 05. I don't think I'm going to need my 08 right now because this stuff is pretty small, the areas that I'm going to doodle in. But of course you can do whatever you want. So what I wanted to start off with was saying that you don't have to be restricted to doodling in just this big empty space here. You can actually doodle almost every single spot in this entire heart. You can do doodles on top of what's already there. You can add in more doodles. You can create your own. You can leave a lot of space. You can leave no space. It's totally up to you. But let me just show you. So I'm going to start with my 01. And let me just start with something really simple. So up here we have these kind of donut looking shapes, and I could actually just leave those as donuts. Maybe I want to add in another donut down here because there's a little bit extra space, and I can actually even put another one there. Oh, I'm sorry, I was out of frame. So I just added in this one and this one. But what I can also do is doodle on what's already in there. I can put, for instance, a dot in the middle of that smaller circle. I can fill it in. I could put a plus or an X. I can also make lines coming out from the center. I can do, what else can I do? I can do an extra line around there and around here. I think entangling, that's called an echo. So I can do that and kind of fill up the space in between. I could color the space outside of the donuts if I wanted to get a real impactful look. The coloring something in black against the white is, you know, the best contrast, so it looks really dramatic. But for now, I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to fill in those little circles and then do the lines out from the circle to the outer circle. And I'm not even paying attention to how many lines I'm putting on each. You can have them be all the same. You can have them all be different. I mean, this is really, sky's the limit. Whatever you can think of, you can do. Okay, so let's just move away from that now. Sorry, let me turn my paper a little bit. So in this section, this is another great section where I could actually leave it blank and maybe just color in the circles with different colors. Because I stamped this on watercolor paper, I'm actually going to color with watercolors after I'm done with my doodling. So I could just leave this area as is and then color in the different circles with my different watercolors. Or what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to show you how I can actually doodle within these circles. So one thing that's an easy thing to do inside a circle is a spiral. So I'm going to do this kind of tight spiral. And it's okay if it overlaps on itself. It's not a big deal. These aren't perfect circles and you're not drawing perfectly either, so it doesn't matter if you go over the same line again. But what I'm going to do is just add in my spiral inside of each one of these larger circles. They kind of look a little bit like stones. This looks a little bit like a cobblestone path. So I'm going to put my spiral in this one. And I think that's all I'll do. The rest of them are a little bit smaller, so I'll leave those as is. But the other thing I can do is I can actually draw in more circles. Can you see that? I can draw in some really tiny little circles in the spaces around the circles that are already there. And yeah, those are really, really tiny. And then the thing I can do is if I'm not going to fill a particular space with a circle, I can actually just fill it in with my pen. But I want to put, for my design idea, I want to put as many circles in this area as I can. So I'm going to add one in here, but there's just a tiny little bit of space. And so in all the little spaces, I'm going to black it out with my pen. And I'm just turning to make sure I can draw and you can see. I can actually make circles so small that there will be no area left to fill in. But I don't want to do that. I do want some blacked out areas. So right here, it's very pointy right there. I'll put in one circle and then fill in. Right here is pretty small. So you can see a little bit of that detail starting to emerge because I'm putting in that high contrast area. And then of course at this end I can put in my own circles to fill up the rest. And then do a little bit of that. And this is why I'm using the 01 because I can get into these really small areas and either make my really small circles or I can fill in. So that's that. You can see how that's gonna look. I'm gonna move on to my next section. In these rectangles, what I can do is I can actually put a different pattern in each of the rectangles. I can just pick one pattern that I really like and put it in each rectangle. I can even draw another rectangle. Well, it's not exactly a rectangle, but I can draw another one there in that big space. There's kind of a big space over here. I can draw something in here. Just following that line that's already there. I can actually put, these are called dangles right here. I could actually put dangles into those rectangles to kind of mimic this dangle area. There's really so much you can do. And I think what I'm going to do is just go really simple and I'm going to do, how about a checkerboard? So I can just come in and actually this point I might come in, just do the smaller lines right now, and then I'll come in with my 08 to fill in those squares. If I'm going to make this a true checkerboard and not just a grid, then I'm going to have to fill in every other little box here. You probably could stick with the 01, it would just take a little bit longer. But with the 08, you have to be a lot more careful because it is such a big tip compared to that 01. So I'm just going to fill in these. I know that's not perfect, but I can come back and fix those later. And what I can do is I can actually leave this one as a checkerboard and then leave this one as a blank grid. And maybe I'll do every other rectangle as just a grid. And you can make these boxes as big or as small as you want. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that in all of my rectangles. One thing that I really wanted to do when I saw this area right here, these to me look like flower stems. So what I'm going to do is just draw a little flower on each one of those little topper circles. And then I'll have myself a tiny little flower garden in here. And of course, it doesn't have to be perfect. I'm not even counting the number of petals on each. There's something like maybe 5 or 6. I don't have to make them all the same. My petals don't have to all be the same size. And then what I can do is I can actually come in and fill in the circles or the petals or the entire flower if I want to do that. So that's another section. And I can actually, if I wanted to, come in and put some dangles from the top. And I'm just going to mimic how these dangles look with the straight line, the charm on the end, and then a little bit of zigzaggy line to make the hanging line a little bit more interesting. And I can do that. I can come around here and do dangles all along the underside of this curve. I can grow some flowers on this bottom edge to mimic the flowers up here. Oh, sorry, I keep going out of frame. It's really hard to draw when you're zoomed in so far. You have to make sure to keep looking at the camera all the time. Okay, so now this area kind of looks a little bit like this area, and that gives it a little bit of continuity. One of the things you can do is there's this really big area here. Probably what I would do in that area is pick one of my favorite doodle or tangle designs and fill up that area. I could leave it blank if I wanted to, because this area is pretty detailed, and once I finish with all the checkerboards, this area is going to be really detailed. So it might be nice to give your eyes just a little bit of a rest in that area. Or let me show you one other thing you can do. You can do an echo, and here I could actually probably use the 05 pen to make a little bit thicker line. I'm just going to echo that shape of that whole shape, and then what I can do is start doing my tangle in here. So you can see that even if I do some kind of pattern in here, it's going to be surrounded by this empty white space, if I leave it empty, that is. And that serves as sort of a buffer between the detail of this area and then this big area here. And I can do just really small detailing. And if I want to, I can actually add I think this is a real Zentangle pattern. So I can add in those little circles and then maybe black out. But like I said, no matter how detailed I make this section in here, as long as I leave this border empty, it's going to be a nice little buffer. It's a place for your eyes to kind of rest before they take in more detail. So that's what I'm going to do for that section. And then even this long section here, let me turn my paper so you can see more of it. There we go. So this whole long section here, I could do something, but I feel like there's a lot of detail. I don't necessarily want to fill that up, but what I can do is just make some little marks. To give a little bit of interest to this area. But it's not a real complicated design. And I'm just going to go all the way around this sort of swoop with my pen and just draw those tiny little lines. And the reason why I thought about doing these tiny little lines is because there's this area right here and here that has those lines, and granted they're in a closed space, but I just thought this would kind of mimic those lines. So one thing that you can do to make your piece a little bit more cohesive is repeating patterns in different areas. So that's like what I'm doing here with the lines and the lines. And then the flowers and the flowers down here. And if I want to, I can put the, oh, I already put, there's dangles down here, and I put a couple dangles down here. And then I mimic the swirls of this area with my swirls up here. So it's a lot of bringing up the same kind of patterns, and that will give you your piece a little bit more of a cohesiveness. And then right in here, there's lots of space for more swirls. So I'm going to add some swirls there. And then I think for this area, I'm going to do something kind of simple. Maybe not fill in the whole area because this swirly area is pretty busy. And what I can do with the swirly area actually is I can start filling in some of those outside areas that are not part of the swirls, because the coloring in with the black always makes a really nice contrast and gives it a bit of interest. If I think there's too much, like this right here is going to be a kind of a large area to black out, I can actually extend my swirl, and I can actually just put another line in there so that it looks like it's part of the other swirls, and then just fill in between it. And this can look like that's part of that swirl, and then I'm just going to fill in this area. And then even in this area, I can make a little bit more, like there are more lines of that swirl, so that I don't have quite such a big area to color in. Although if you want to, of course, that's up to you. So then I would go around this whole area and kind of fill in what areas I want with the solid black, and then add in some extra lines. Like down here around this bottom section, there's a lot of larger areas with no swirl. So I would probably draw in my little extra lines so that there's not quite so much dark area. I don't want to have really huge patches of black in here. I just want some. That's just how I feel about it. So I don't want too much. So I'm going to add in my extra lines and then do my filling in there. And then for this one section, I'm going to think about, I can do just some small patterns like this on one side of that area. Okay, and now I'm getting really close to that top part, so I'll just stop. And that's it. I can have just that. I can actually do a little bit more, just 3 as the base, and then that one comes to a natural end when the pyramid is topped off. I can even do just a little bit with nothing on top, just to fill a little bit of space. So there we go. We have some wide open space, but then we also have some interest with the pattern, and that pattern kind of feels a little boring to me, so I'm going to come in and echo these little half circle shapes, and then I'm going to fill in the smaller area. And there we go. That's a lot more interesting than just having this kind of plain little half circles. I can do it over here as well. And then I can even do it in this little area, just to give it a little more interest, and then I'll fill in those later. So basically this is kind of it. I mean, I can do a little bit more filling in of some areas, but this is really kind of it. Let me zoom back out. That's kind of all I wanted to do for the drawing, besides what I said I was going to finish filling in, but you don't have to watch me do all that. So let me finish filling in whatever I said I was going to do, and then I'll be right back and we can start with the watercolors.